Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god
Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god cards. Egyptian what? Egyptian god monsters. With Egyptian gods.
An Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card. Egyptian god monsters.
Egyptian god card. Egyptian god cards. Egyptian god cards. Egyptian god cards. 3 Egyptian god cards. 3 Egyptian god cards. 2 of the Egyptian god cards. 3 Egyptian god cards. Egyptian god card. 3 Egyptian god cards. Egyptian god card. 2 Egyptian god cards. Egyptian god card. The 3rd Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card. Your Egyptian god card.
My Egyptian god card. My Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god cards.
Egyptian god card will be the Egyptian god Slifer the Sky Dragon. Egyptian god monsters.
An Egyptian god monster. An Egyptian god monster. An Egyptian god card. An Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card is
An Egyptian god card was
An
played.
Egyptian god card.
The Egyptian god.
that Egyptian god. My Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card. My Egyptian god card.
An Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card. My Egyptian god.
Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card. An Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god cards is
My Egyptian god card. My Egyptian god card.
Your Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card. Egyptian god monsters.
My Egyptian god card. My Egyptian god. My Egyptian god monster. An Egyptian god. Your Egyptian god card.
your Egyptian god card to use.
Egyptian god card. The Egyptian god.
2 Egyptian god. The Egyptian god card.
Their Egyptian god cards. The Egyptian god cards.
The Egyptian god cards. Their Egyptian god cards.
Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card. My Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god cards and Egyptian god cards. Egyptian god cards. You.
Egyptian god card. That Egyptian god card. Egyptian god cards.
Egyptian god cards.
3 Egyptian god cards. Egyptian god card.
3 Egyptian god cards.
Egyptian god cards.
Egyptian god cards.
Egyptian god cards.
Egyptian god card. Egyptian what? God.
Egyptian god cards to him.
Egyptian god cards.
Egyptian god cards. Egyptian god cards. Egyptian god cards. Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card. The Egyptian god card. His life.
Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card. Egyptian god. 3rd Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god cards. Egyptian what? These Egyptian god monsters. Egyptian gods.
All 3 Egyptian god cards will
The Egyptian god Slifer the Sky Dragon.
My Egyptian god card.
My Egyptian god card.
Their Egyptian god cards and
The 3rd Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card.
3rd Egyptian god card.
my Egyptian god card.
your Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card.
Your Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card.
My Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card.
Your Egyptian god card.
Egyptian gods. 3 Egyptian god cards.
The 3rd Egyptian god card. Your Egyptian god card. The Egyptian god card. Your Egyptian god cards. All 3 Egyptian god cards. Your Egyptian god cards.
3 Egyptian god cards. Egyptian god card. 3 Egyptian gods.
Egyptian god card. With his Egyptian god card. His Egyptian god card.
An Egyptian god card.
His Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card.
The Egyptian god cards. The Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card.
3 Egyptian god cards.
Your Egyptian god card is Egyptian god card. Or of an Egyptian god card. And his Egyptian god card will be Egyptian god card, Yugi.
Egyptian god card.
Egyptian god card.
And your Egyptian god card.
My Egyptian god card, Slifer the Sky Dragon.
3 Egyptian god cards. One with the Egyptian god card. The Egyptian god monsters. Egyptian god monsters.
These Egyptian gods, don't you?
3 Egyptian god monsters.
3 Egyptian god monsters.
The Egyptian god tablets.
3 Egyptian god monsters.
The Egyptian god monsters. But at a great
Involved in my Egyptian god card. 3 Egyptian god monsters. The 3 Egyptian god cards
The
is
3 Egyptian god cards he had begun to create. Create the images of the Egyptian god monsters.
the Egyptian god monsters.
The prototypes of the 3 Egyptian god cards.
Behold all 3 Egyptian god cards.
Egyptian god card, Obelisk the Tormentor. Egyptian god cards.
And that's his Egyptian god card, the winged dragon of Ra. Eric's Egyptian god card, after all.
This card of the gods. Card of the gods. Egyptian god card. The winged dragon of Ra.
His Egyptian god card inside.
That's Merrick's Egyptian god card. Your Egyptian god card is
Egyptian god card of an Egyptian god monster. Egyptian god card. Their Egyptian god cards.
Merrick's Egyptian god card, after all.
Egyptian god card. The Egyptian
My Egyptian God card, Egyptian God monster
The
from
final Egyptian God card.
all the Egyptian God monsters.
How your Egyptian god card?
Of the Egyptian God card card.
With Marek's Egyptian God card.
The gods.
The rage of my Egyptian God card is going to strike everyone involved.
Merrick has angered the gods.
Marek's Egyptian God card. Why Egyptian God cards?
The great Egyptian God monsters will serve every
Right there, when his Egyptian god monster went
Egyptian God card.
Egyptian god card! The winged dragon of Ra!
That Egyptian God card.
Your Egyptian god card, the winged dragon of Ra.
Great.
Egyptian god card, Merrick.
Egyptian god card was a...
Show me that Egyptian God card.
The Egyptian God card you took from an Egyptian God? My Egyptian God card. My Egyptian God card. Egyptian God.
The Egyptian God monster will...
Egyptian God card. Egyptian God monster. All the Egyptian God monsters. The gods. The Egyptian God card in your deck.
Egyptian God card. 2 Egyptian God cards. Then
Egyptian god card.
The Egyptian god card I gave.
Egyptian God card.
Egyptian god cards.
Egyptian God card. Egyptian God card now.
Egyptian god card. That Egyptian god card.
Egyptian God card.
The Egyptian God card.
Egyptian god I
Egyptian God card. Show your... This or my Egyptian God card.
Your Egyptian god monster. Your Egyptian god card will sell. Egyptian god card on the field?
My Egyptian God card.
Egyptian God card. Egyptian God card works.
The Egyptian God card, you now. Egyptian God card. Frost, your Egyptian God card. Precious Egyptian God card. How can an Egyptian God monster have
Egyptian God card. Your Egyptian God card already.
Five your Egyptian God card?
The Egyptian God card you...
The Egyptian God cards have...
My Egyptian God card grows stronger.
The 3 Egyptian God cards.
The 2 remaining Egyptian God cards.
And our Egyptian God card. He
The
must
3 Egyptian God cards. But I obtain all 3 Egyptian God cards.
My Egyptian God card, Obelisk the Tormentor. To defeat Egyptian God card, the Winged Dragon of Ra. Out an Egyptian God card.
The 3rd Egyptian God card. Last remaining Egyptian God card, my dear sister.
This Egyptian God card.
These 2 Egyptian gods clash.
His Egyptian god card. But
Egyptian God card. That Egyptian God card. 2 Egyptian God cards in my deck.
My Egyptian God card. The Winged Dragon of Ra.
An Egyptian God card. An Egyptian God card, Marek.
His Egyptian God card. Of all the Egyptian God monsters. Egyptian God Phoenix. Egyptian God. Of an Egyptian God monster.
his Egyptian god card.
My Egyptian God card.
Most powerful Egyptian God card. The Egyptian God card. Our Egyptian God cards reign supreme. Your Egyptian God card and your... I've drawn my Egyptian God card.
My Egyptian god card. Slifer the Sky Dragon.
His Egyptian God card first.
His Egyptian god card.
Your Egyptian God card. Your Egyptian God card. Slifer the Sky Dragon. It was both Egyptian God cards are mine.
My Egyptian God card was...
All 3 Egyptian God cards. Egyptian gods.
Egyptian god card.
These Egyptian god cards. Only Egyptian god card. Egyptian god card.
My Egyptian God card.
My Egyptian God card.
Your Egyptian God card before...
I summon my Egyptian God card! Slifer, the Sky Dragon!
First Egyptian god has arrived.
Egyptian God, but he seems hesitant.
Egyptian God card. Egyptian God card.
The battle of the gods has begun!
The Egyptian gods. Your Egyptian God card is...
Egyptian god card.
Egyptian God card. 2 of the 3 Egyptian God cards? Egyptian God card.
Egyptian God card, weak Egyptian God card. My Egyptian God card.
Egyptian God card. Egyptian God card. Egyptian God card.
My Egyptian God card from yours.
Egyptian god card
My
can be...
Egyptian God card. Egyptian God card. Your Egyptian God card.
Our Egyptian God monsters is to Egyptian gods. Egyptian gods.
The Egyptian god cards.
Egyptian God card. My Egyptian God card.
Yugi's Egyptian god card is...
Egyptian God card.
My Egyptian God card.
3 Egyptian god cards in my... Now I have 2 Egyptian god cards.
My Egyptian God card. 2 Egyptian gods clash.
all 3 Egyptian God cards.
Soon all 3 Egyptian God cards. 2 Egyptian God cards.
Eric's Egyptian God card. The Winged Dragon of Ra. 2 Egyptian God cards.
2 Egyptian god cards. And
All 3 Egyptian God cards.
His Egyptian God card.
his Egyptian god card.
Egyptian God card.
My Egyptian God card. I'm your Egyptian God card. Your Egyptian God card. Egyptian God.
Egyptian God card on the field.
Marek's Egyptian God card.
Your Egyptian God card.
Yugi's Egyptian God card.
Your Egyptian God card. My Egyptian God card.
It's Egyptian God card.
Marek's Egyptian God card.
My Egyptian God card. My Egyptian God card. My Egyptian God card. Your Egyptian God cards attack.
About to summon his second Egyptian God card?
The Egyptian God card. Egyptian God monster. An Egyptian God. Egyptian God.
Egyptian God?
My Egyptian God slime. My Egyptian God slime. Egyptian God slime unstoppable. Egyptian God slime. Egyptian God slime. Egyptian God slime. Egyptian God card imposter. Egyptian God slime.
Egyptian God slime.
Egyptian God card. The winged dragon of Ra. My Egyptian God slime. All three Egyptian God cards.
Egyptian God card is impossible to destroy.
Egyptian God card. Is Egyptian God card. Egyptian God Phoenix.
One Egyptian God
My
card.
Egyptian God card. My Egyptian God. Egyptian God slime. Your Egyptian God slime is my Egyptian God card. Egyptian God or Egyptian God. Egyptian God card. Claim the three Egyptian God cards.
Three Egyptian God cards. All three of the Egyptian God cards.
3 Egyptian God cards and
Three Egyptian God cards.
With all 3 Egyptian God cards. Egyptian God cards. All 3 Egyptian God cards. The Egyptian God card.
All three of the Egyptian God cards.
God card. 3 Egyptian God cards. Egyptian God card.
Egyptian God cards.
God cards.
My Egyptian God cards.
God cards. Yugi's Egyptian God cards. But Yugi's God cards.
The God cards?
3 Egyptian God cards.
God smiting
The
God.
God cards.
God cards! The God cards! God cards!
Master of the gods, not the master of the
The
cloud.
Egyptian gods.
Egyptian God card.
Egyptian God cards.
An Egyptian God card.
The Egyptian God card. Sniper, the Sky Dragon.
God cards. But I'm
2 more Egyptian God cards. Obelisk the Tormentor and the Winged Dragon of Ra.
3 Egyptian God cards. Egyptian God cards. Yugi's God cards. 3 of your Egyptian God cards.
My own Egyptian gods. Obelisk the Tormentor, Sniper the Sky Dragon, and the Winged Dragon of Ra. My Egyptian gods.
Egyptian God cards.
The Egyptian God cards.
We, the gods of Egypt. God's welfare.
The Egyptian God cards.
The God cards?
All 3 Egyptian God cards.
Those Egyptian God cards.
God cards. The 3 Egyptian God cards.
Use the God cards.
3 Egyptian gods.
Egyptian God card.
Egyptian god. The gods. The Egyptian god. Obelisk the Tormentor.
Egyptian God cards.
God card. My Egyptian god. Egyptian god. The Egyptian god cards. God cards.
3 Egyptian God cards.
3 Egyptian God cards.
The Egyptian gods. The gods of Egypt. 3 Egyptian gods.
The Egyptian God cards.
3 of his Egyptian God cards.
Egyptian God cards.
The Egyptian God cards. The Egyptian God cards.
God cards.
Great deity of darkness, I invoke thee. Hear my call. Arise, Obelisk the Tormentor!
It's all three of my Egyptian God cards.
An Egyptian God monster.
Now I call forth the 3 gods of Egypt!
The Egyptian God cards. The Egyptian gods.
Gods may need my help.
Egyptian gods!
Egyptian gods.
Gods did
3 Egyptian God cards.
Those Egyptian God cards?
The Egyptian God cards. Egyptian God cards.
God cards.
Your Egyptian God cards.
Egyptian God cards before.
Egyptian gods!
Egyptian gods.
The Egyptian gods? The Egyptian gods! Legendary god monsters? 3 Egyptian gods, the legendary monster. Legendary gods of Egypt, please hear my call. In the name of every pharaoh that came before, I now beseech thee, I summon Obelisk the Tormentor!
Egyptian God.
Out of the Egyptian gods.
To an Egyptian God.
The Egyptian gods.
Gods of Egypt!
Egyptian gods themselves.
Angered the gods. Your Egyptian God make the gods.
The Egyptian god!
The Egyptian gods.
Akura, your reign of terror ends here and now! You've disgraced the Egyptian gods, and for that you must pay! Come forth, Winged Dragon of Ra!
sun god, the mighty winged dragon of Ra!
Yet another Egyptian god.
Only the gods of Egypt.
An Egyptian god.
Great deity of the sun!
Egyptian gods themselves.
Egyptian gods?
Egyptian gods, the Egyptian gods.
The Egyptian gods. The Egyptian gods set
A new Egyptian god.
And the three Egyptian gods.
And now I shall call upon the three Egyptian gods! Obelisk the Tormentor, Slifer the Sky Dragon, and the Winged Dragon of Ra! Your fate is now sealed! Behold, the gods of Egypt! Three Egyptian gods! Your deity shall...
Egyptian gods!
Egyptian gods! Attack Egyptian gods! Your Egyptian gods are... The Egyptian gods, so-called deities of...
The Egyptian gods!
Egyptian gods.
Mighty gods of Egypt! I revive thee! The Egyptian gods! And now I give you the creator of light! The Egyptian gods!
Egyptian god here.
An Egyptian god!
Another Egyptian god?
Behold the third Egyptian god!
All three Egyptian gods at once!
The three Egyptian gods!
All three Egyptian gods!
Egyptian gods
All
made
three Egyptian god cards?
all three Egyptian god cards. All three Egyptian god cards.
The three Egyptian gods.
An Egyptian god.
For my Egyptian gods.
Last Egyptian god.
Those Egyptian gods.
Of each Egyptian god card.
Against the Egyptian gods?
To defeat all three Egyptian god cards and win the duel.
Those Egyptian gods.
He's turning the Egyptian gods against themselves.
Egyptian god gods.
Pharaoh! It's about time I eliminated those Egyptian god cards.
Three Egyptian gods?
He beat the Egyptian gods in one move?
Three Egyptian gods.
The Egyptian god cards.
It's the Egyptian gods. What?
Beat the Egyptian gods! Three Egyptian gods
An
was...
Egyptian god.
If I were you, I would have summoned an Egyptian god also, Pharaoh. And that's why I was prepared for this very moment. Which means your Egyptian god goes back to the graveyard. So this duel is still on.
No way! He just defeated Slifer for the second time!
The Egyptian gods.
No Egyptian god cards.
Egyptian gods. Egyptian god card.
God cards in the school.
Knows the Egyptian god cards.
The Egyptian gods themselves.
God of the sun.
An Egyptian god.
Egyptian god cards.
Egyptian god.
Egyptian god. An Egyptian god. I am one. I am the Egyptian god. God card.
You're an Egyptian god.
It's Obelisk the Tormentor! An Egyptian god card, but how? Those no longer exist!
This can't be. When the pharaoh left this realm, so did the Egyptian god cards. Do my eyes deceive me? How did Kaiba make the impossible possible and raise from the ancient beyond one of the pharaoh's mightiest monsters?
It's no monster. It's a god. Attack with